do is we are going to go over some of the launch sites, some unsheltered locations, reiterate some of the information that Sophie and Shelby went over about the care bags, and then we are going to go into exactly how to complete the survey. For anybody who is still in this room but thinks you should be in another one, we are going to go over a lot of the same information. I've also done all of the counts so I can answer those questions, but just while I'm going over this information, and also completing the surveys is very similar. So we're going to go over a lot of information. This is just going to be a couple extra specifically for the unsheltered. And again, I apologize for that technical difficulty. Is everybody able to see this slide big enough?
I am so sorry. Jennifer Holbrook got kicked out. Could you let her back in? Because this is her first year, so I want to make sure she's seeing this.
It says that she is being admitted now. And I apologize, everybody. We were supposed to have another staff on, but unfortunately there was an emergency, and she was not able to join. So we are kind of trying to do all of this stuff as a 3-man team. So I appreciate your patience. Okay. So I'm going to try to go through this really quickly so we can get to the survey, and as we can answer some additional questions, and so that Erin can kind of get back to the youth information. So these are the launch sites. And again, you guys will get PDF versions of these slides as well. And Shelby, as soon as Jennifer is actually in, I will reassign her to this room. We are going to have a couple different launch sites. So in Newcastle County, we will be launching from the Hope Center, which is 365 Airport Road. In Kent County, VMC was kind enough to offer their office building. So we will be meeting at 9 East Lockerman Street in Dover. There will be 2 different launch sites in Sussex County for the east side and the west side. So Sophie will be launching people from Community Resource Center of Rehoboth for the east side, and we're still looking for a site lead for the west side, but we will be using the Cross Love Inc., which is in Seaford. We've used those same 2 launch sites the last couple years, so it's not really a change from that. So if anybody's participated in the counts in these counties before, we're using almost all of the same launch sites or relatively similar ones. Just as a caveat, there might be some select teams that may be launching from other locations after they've coordinated with their county lead. Approval of this is on a case-by-case basis. So if you haven't already talked to myself, Sophie, or Rachel, we are anticipating you coming to the launch site and not anywhere else. But for anybody who's on the call that is knows that they're going to be launching from their organization and have already talked to us, we have approved a couple of those cases from here. For unsheltered team roles and responsibilities, we have 3 different kind of people who, or 3 different kind of roles on a team. So there's going to be the site lead, which are, we just talked about on the previous slide. So their responsibilities are to make sure all of the volunteer materials make it to the sites, and that all of the teams receive them. We are going to ensure that all volunteers sign in for attendance and have completed their waiver prior to surveying. We're going to review and complete kind of a launch site checklist to make sure we kind of go through all of the if, ands, or buts before you guys go into the out for the surveying. We will also be the point of contact for the team leads, and as well as the back and forth between the county lead for the night of, for the most part for the same people, so you won't have too many people to connect with. We will also contact all volunteers for their materials at the end of the night, or we'll coordinate the following day for them to be able to get that back at another time. So if we aren't able to, or you guys are getting back, or you want to stay out longer, then we will coordinate with you to get those materials back at another time. Then we have our team leads. So we had some
Hey,
questions.
Robert,
Our team leads, again, are most likely going to be the person who's transporting the rest of the team, but they don't have to be the same person. So the team lead is going to ensure that everybody has everybody's phone numbers and the cell phone number of their site lead. So making sure everybody is able to contact whoever they need to. We are also going to be transporting / directing the teams to the known locations, and ensuring all of the locations in the list of that you're going to get are covered by the team. So we are going to be providing you guys with a list of known locations and a zone to cover. So the team lead's going to make sure that all of those sites are hit before you guys finish surveying for the evening. We also ask that the team lead ensures that there's at least 2 passes of the locations in that geography before returning to the launch. We usually ask all Unsheltered teams to do 2 loops to make sure that if somebody wasn't settled in for the night or who might not have been there yet, it just increases the probability that we're gonna catch people that night. And they also coordinate with the site lead to make sure that we get all of the team's materials back at the end of the night or at another time. And then we have just regular team members. So team members are going to be the ones surveying people experiencing homelessness in those known locations that you're going to travel to. And you guys are going to be the ones that are handing out the care bags. We always ensure that there's no less than 2 members per team. And we want to make sure that no less than 2 members per team are approaching people just as a safety precaution. And we're going to talk a little bit about safety on the next slide. So those are just the different roles and responsibilities. If you are interested in being a team lead, please let me know. But we will be reaching out to anybody who indicated that they said that they would like to be a team lead and getting in contact with them to make sure that they have everything that they need for that. Just some examples of some unsheltered locations or known locations that you guys will be going to. So there will could be parks, alleys, under overpasses, parking lots, there are transit centers, encampments, abandoned buildings. There's a ton of different places that are going to be on your list of locations that you can go to. County leads will be contacting all of the emergency rooms ahead of time to notify them and get any special instructions or anything like that. For the teams that have an ER in their volunteer zone on the night of, we will talk to you directly and communicate with you directly about any special instructions or anything to expect as you're going into the ERs. But many people sleep in their waiting rooms, so that is a place that we cover on the night of. But we'll be talking to the specific teams for that. Shelter count safety. Again, always stay with at least 1 person. There should never be less than 2 people approaching somebody at a given time. You want to maintain awareness of your surroundings, where you are, where other people are, and making sure that you are not blocking yourself into a given space, and that you always have a way to get out of an interaction or a place that you're in. Some of this can't be avoidable depending on where you're going to be going, but as much as possible, try to stay in lit places. But if you're using a flashlight to help with visibility, please be respectful and don't shine it in anybody's faces or anything like that. As Shelby mentioned earlier, you're entering into places that people are living, that are their home for the time being. So we just want to make sure that we're maintaining an air of respectfulness while we're doing that. Again, we also want you to prioritize your own safety as well. If you don't feel safe approaching someone or a place, don't. Your safety is paramount. So please make sure that you're just following your gut, and that if anything's making you feel uncomfortable or you feel like anything's starting to get heated or going a way you don't like, to disengage and make sure you get to a place where you feel safe again. We don't want you guys to transport anybody. This is not a like service engagement effort. It is a surveying effort, and we do want to make sure that you're covering the locations that need to be covered. So we are asking that nobody transports anybody outside of your team to any different places on that given evening. And if somebody's having an emergency, we do encourage you to call 911 if needed, or the appropriate emergency services. Again, if you encounter somebody that's not responsive, don't panic. They could be asleep. And as Shelby mentioned earlier, if they're not coming out of their tent, there could be a variety of different reasons for that. So you can do, if they're visible, you can do kind of a quick check to see if they're breathing or if they have enough layers. If you're still concerned, you can say, like, I'm sorry to bother you, are you okay? But if there's not really anything super blaring that's indicating that they're having an emergency, please leave them alone. We just really don't want people to be disturbed or put out any more than they already are with us kind of traipsing into their space to get these surveys every year. I'm going to blow through these kind of quickly so that I can answer some questions and then we can get to the survey. But there are some unsheltered FAQs that we get every year. So how will you know where to look? Again, we're going to provide a list of locations and maps for you guys in different zones for you to cover. What if you can't find anybody? I just want to make this very clear. This happens every single year, especially if you are not one of our actual outreach workers doing this work. The list of locations we get is over a course of months. So there is a very good realistic possibility that you're not going to find anybody. If you've visited all of your locations and you've done your loop twice and you still haven't found anybody, that's okay. That's not a bad thing. And you can return to the launch site and notify your launch lead. But it's not a bad thing if you don't find people outside. What if you know a location that isn't on the map? So again, we work really hard to try to identify as many locations in advance as possible to provide that for you guys. But again, this population's transient. So if you know for sure that you saw somebody there 3 days ago and it's not on our list, you please go to those locations. But just remember to try to cover all of your locations on your list as well. And if you remember a location that's not exactly in your zone, you can feel free to contact that site lead so that they can send that information over to the team that is covering that area. Can you guys carpool? So yes, a majority of the teams will need to carpool. And again, we'll be reaching out to all of the team leads to confirm that they're able to transport the team. And if not, we'll be reaching out to additional people to try to identify transportation for the team that night. Can you bring additional people? No. Sorry, we always welcome as many volunteers as we can, but there's a lot of logistics that go into that. And lots of times the site lead or the teams will not be prepared for additional people that aren't accounted for. So if you want more people to participate with you, or you want to participate, you haven't signed up yet, please do that. Please do that by the 18th. So that we can get all of you guys on the teams and where the information that you need to be able to participate. But we really ask for no last minute additions unless 5 people just came down with COVID and aren't able to do it, and then you're like, oh well, I can, then we would make an exception for that. But in general, there's been since October to sign up for this and to get this information. So we really do not encourage any last minute additions after the final teams go out. And will you have a safe way of identifying yourself as a volunteer? So yes, you're going to have flashlights. We have some leftover car magnets. We'll also be providing additional ways for you guys to be able to identify yourself. We have some extra funding, and I saw some thing in the chat earlier about some safety vests, so I might look into that. But we will have ways for you guys to identify yourselves. We also just encourage you to wear quite a bright colors in general that are visible for the night of, if you have those available to you. And to reiterate a question that was asked earlier, we will be notifying law enforcement. But again, sometimes that information doesn't get down to the patrol officers. So if you're stopped, we apologize in advance, but just let them know kind of what you're doing. And if there's any issues, just let your site lead know. So that's kind of it for the last little bit of general information, particularly for the count. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and I'm gonna see if anybody has any specific questions about that stuff, before I pull the training survey up for you. And for anybody worried about being in the wrong room, again, we're recording all of these, so the information that's covered in the other rooms, I will be able to send that out to you and get that information over to you too.
Hi,
Olivia.
this is Olivia. Hey, hi everybody. I'm in Kent County in Dover at Treadway Towers. I noticed that this site will be one of the setup sites for our Unsheltered event. And I wonder if there's anything that you needed me to do prior to that to get it ready. Do you all need tables? Do you need, what does it mean to be like a launch site? So do I need to do anything?
Yeah, so launch sites are really just for the place where people go to park their cars, meet their team, coalesce, and get all of their materials together and stuff. Rachel is the Kent County lead, so she'll be the one at that location. She'll definitely be following up with you guys for anything specific that's needed for that. But it's really just kind of the place where all of the teams come together to get their stuff before they go out for the night. And then it's where they will drop that stuff off at the end of the night. If the site lead's going to be there, or the site lead will coordinate with the teams to get that stuff back at a later time.
What time do I need to have the doors open? The locks and such?
Probably around 9, because she'll probably want to get there around 9 to set up, and then 9:30 is when the rest of the volunteers will be there. But I will definitely make sure that she communicates with you if you're the person who's going to be making sure that that's set up and stuff for that site.
Thank you.
Any other quick questions before we move into the survey really quick? And I am going to try to go through this pretty quickly just so I can make sure that Erin has the rest of the time that she needs to go over the information that she's going to go over for the youth count. And then if anybody still has any questions after this, you can feel free to give me a call, and I will try to do my best to cover what we didn't get to cover. I'm also happy to stay on for an extra couple of minutes because I know that we wasted some precious time trying to get the breakouts figured out. All right, so this is the Unsheltered survey. And this is the training survey for markup. So this will be sent out to everybody as well, so you can see kind of the comments and the notes. We're just going to go through some of the major stuff about doing the survey that we run into issues with every year, and that are important to know about doing it. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is kind of this top section here. So this needs to be filled out for every single survey. But sometimes people get into talking to somebody and they figure out that they've already been surveyed that night, and they filled it out and they don't need to. So really, I recommend that you only complete the top section if you, the person that you're interacting with hasn't already been surveyed and consents to being surveyed. But it is really critical to make sure that you fill in that information because it is part of our data entry. But most volunteers choose to complete that section after they've ended the interaction with the person that they're surveying, which is totally fine. But sometimes when that happens, they forget to fill it out. So if you do it afterwards, please just don't forget to fill that out. The next section is the consent statements. So every person needs to give consent to be surveyed for you to be able to do that. So please make sure that you are reading the consent statement and asking them for their consent to be surveyed, particularly this person. That's the one that's required. We do have a second consent statement that's just trying to build our base of people with lived experience that we are engaging with throughout the year. So it is a consent statement just asking if we at Housing Alliance and from the COC are able to contact them. The second statement's not critical and it can be skipped. If the person's not interested, that shouldn't prevent you from completing the rest of the survey. So the first statement required, the second statement can be skipped if they're not interested. So then we move on to the first part of our survey, which is the current living situation. So for those of you that are doing the Unsheltered survey, it's going to be where are you sleeping tonight? For anybody who was supposed to be in the other rooms, it's going to be based off where they were sleeping the night of the 24th. But primarily this question's pretty similar across all of the surveys. So we have specific unsheltered locations listed out so that you can just check them off. But if you encounter anybody, particularly if they're that youth age that's not staying in a unsheltered location, you can just select other and enter that information there. If you do select other, there is just a second question there that says if this is a stable place to sleep. That is for the youth count volunteers. So if it's anybody who is between the ages of 13 and 24, we want to make sure that we're asking that question if they're staying somewhere that's not a unsheltered location. And again, we really try to do it only with people who are staying in those unsheltered locations, but since we are incorporating the youth count this year, we did make that change so that way we could collect those additional surveys and that it would be easy to continue to fill it out and not super confusing for you guys. So other option. Then we're going to ask them how long they've been staying there, and that's just to determine kind of their length of time homeless. The next important questions are going to be the demographic information. So the ones that I want to point out are the social security number and the date of birth. So the social security number is the most important piece of data that we collect for deduplication. So to ensure that each person is only being counted once, but it is the hardest data point to collect. It's only collected for deduplication purposes, and it is kept confidential. It's not utilized for any other purpose. So we are not keeping that information to for any other reason than to make sure one person is one person. If the person's not comfortable with giving the social, at least try to get the last four. That is good for deduplication as well, but don't be pushy and you can skip that question if it's needed. Date of birth is kind of opposite. The date of birth or age range cannot be skipped. If we do not have a date of birth, an age, or an age range, we cannot count that survey. The HUD literally will not let us enter it into the system that we account for. So if they are not comfortable with giving the date of birth, please get an age or an approximate age range. It can be any of those three, but this is the most important question in the entire survey, next to the social. To reiterate, please collect their age in some way, shape, or form. That is the most important piece. We do have some other demographic information. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can select all that are applicable. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. For history of homelessness, so questions 9 through 12, 12's on the next page, or should be. I don't know what happened to 12. I will fix that. But they are the hardest questions for people to answer. They are kind of uncomfy to ask sometimes and can be a little sensitive. But we've tried to update them this year to be the easiest and clearest responses. But they don't need to be exact. They can be a best guess or an approximate answer. So if they are, like if you're asking like how long, again, it doesn't need to be an exact number of days or months. It can be approximate. For these guys, we asked specifically the length of time so that it can be a yes or no question. The biggest issue that you guys are gonna have here is this total months. So this is the one that can be the best, most approximate guess. It's not a great question, but we have to ask it. So that's how many total months have you been sleeping in this location or an unsheltered location in the last 3 years? I can barely remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, let alone what happened in the last 3 years. So again, just ask them for their best, most approximate guess. For questions 14 and 15 related to domestic violence and sexual orientation, those are really sensitive questions, and they can potentially be harmful to the person being surveyed. They shouldn't be asked to the extent possible in front of peers or household members or around other people. If a private space is not available, they can be shown to the person being surveyed, and they can be read instead of being asked aloud. The purpose is that if somebody like, we just don't want to be outing anybody or putting anybody in danger when asking those 2 questions. But again, every single question in this survey, aside from age, can be skipped if the person is not comfortable with answering them. So if they're not comfortable with answering them, or it's not safe enough for them to answer those questions, they can be skipped over. And they're just related to the reasoning why they are potentially homeless in the current time frame. Then we get into the health and well-being questions. I'm not going to go into those in detail due to the time, but it's just asking about disability status, health insurance, income levels, if they've ever been in foster care. This just helps us collect some additional information to know kind of what people's risk factors are, or what other things that they have going on top of the homelessness that they're experiencing at this current time. And this last part is the most confusing part for every single person. So I'm going to try to go through it as succinctly as possible. So for adults, every adult person over the age of 18 should have a full survey completed. Whether it's 2 adults in a couple, whether it's a mom with a 19-year-old child staying with her. If the person is over 18, they should have a full survey completed. Now, if you have 2 people who are staying together and they're both adults, then you are going to want to make sure that there's a way to connect those surveys together as a household. So the way that you do that, I'm going to say like person 1, person 2. So if this is person 1's survey, then you're going to enter person 2's information here. Just this broad overarching information saying that this is another adult that I'm in a household with. Now, once you fill out person 2's full survey and you get to this same section, you're going to put person 1's information here. Does that make sense to everybody?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So for person 1, if we have 2 people in a household, we have person 1. This is their survey. This is going to be person 2's information. If this is person 2's survey, this is going to be person 1's information. So 2 full surveys, and then the other person's information right here in this section on those surveys.
Thank you.
So again, the steps here are reiterated. So enter each adult member's information in this table, and then complete the full survey with the next person. And then the previous person's information is going to go in this table. It's super annoying and it is confusing, but it's just to make sure that we are connecting those people together as a household. Otherwise, they're going to be connected. They're going to be shown as like individual people instead of adults in a household together. That is the same for children under the age of 18. So if there are minor household members, so minors under 18 don't need a full survey unless they're unaccompanied, meaning that there's no adult over 18 in the household. If the adult being surveyed has minors under 18, then just like with the top section, you're going to fill out their minor information in these tables. They don't need full surveys. We just need to show that they have children in their household that are also experiencing homelessness that night. If the minors are the ages of 13 to 17 and they have no adult in the household, then they can get a full survey done, and we do want you to have complete a full survey with them. So if it's just a 17-year-old that you come across, then we want you to complete a full survey with them. If the minor is with somebody who's under the age of 25, you can ask that person for consent to complete a full survey with that minor. So otherwise, they would just have their information filled out here for the adult whose survey is being completed. I know that that's a lot of information to go over in one shot, and I apologize for the time frame. We will be going over this again at the actual launch sites, as well as in some other rooms. So if anybody has any questions, please let me know, and I can follow up with you on that. I do want to stop sharing and just give Erin the last little bit of time to go over the rest of the youth count information. But then I can also stay on in the room after she finishes that up for additional questions.
Thanks, Erin. So I'm gonna just speed through. So I'm Erin Nescott, Erin N, it's Erin G, that is just presented. Thank you all for being here. So this is the title of this project. You'll see it, and youth experiencing homelessness with a particular focus on LGBTQ plus community support, conducting the youth count in Delaware. And I work at CCRS, the Center for Community Research and Service. It's at the university in the Biden School. And so as Erin noted, the youth count is a part of the point in time. And Erin and I worked together to incorporate and enhance those youth questions and talk with you all so that we are continuing to get an accurate count of youth. And this is the 13 to 24 range, often unaccompanied. And we're just working to get a greater understanding of that population. As a center, we're going even deeper. We've received funding to take a deeper look at youth homelessness, specifically unaccompanied youth and youth who identify as LGBTQ plus, part of the community. That is a huge need. Research has shown that those who identify in the community have 120% higher risk of experiencing some form of homelessness. And we've partnered with organizations that serve LGBTQ plus youth to try to greater understand the situation and reduce. Moving right along. So the point in time count, this tool that Erin went through, does have questions that will help us to assess this youth surveillance. And then we are also continuing this count in a snowball sample kind of way, February to May. So that's really what you can email me, reach out to me at the center if you'd like to be involved in this. And we're using the Voices of Youth Count survey tool, which I can have, we'll have on record within these files, and I'll have Erin send out these slides too. So we are doing this February to May and up and down the state. So we have survey partners in Newcastle, Kent, and Sussex, and we are actually compensating youth as an equity measure. So creating a cohort of youth citizen surveyors that have lived experience. Erin noted that the Housing Alliance is really working to join forces more with people with lived experience. This is exactly that. So we have at least 8, probably more by now, I have to check in with our survey partners, youth that are signed on and ready to administer this survey. So they're getting training, and they will be helping us to expand this count because of these networks that they have built. One big part of it is social media. So it's very different. It's very new for the state. But we're really looking forward to seeing where it takes us in expanding beyond the point in time night. And we are reaching our 4 o'clock moment, but I want to note super quickly, when you look at the point in time tool, Erin noted there's that other box for where did you sleep last night? Where did you spend your last night? And the Voices of Youth Count survey actually gives youth like more options for that. So it sparks more of that conversation of um, some youth may not actually consider themselves homeless or even housing insecure. But when we look at their situation, it's not stable. So it sparks the way that the question is asked within the Voices of Youth Count survey form gives those kind of in between those grayer area options so that we have more for you to connect with. But we're kicking everything off with the point in time, and the existing survey tool does give us this ability. So we'll be receiving those results for relevant youth, the 13 to 24 range, and then continuing on. I'm going to, Anna, we'll share these slides out, and you can reach out to me with any questions.
Thank you, Erin. And it's probably gonna take us a day or two to process the recordings, but we'll definitely get all the materials out by tomorrow. That way people can consume them on their own time, and ask any questions or any information that we might have missed due to our little breakout room debacle. But I'm happy to stay on for an extra couple of minutes for anybody who has any additional questions about any of the counts, the survey, or any of the information that we've gone over so far. But everybody else is free to go after this point. We are not going to go back into the main room.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody.
I appreciate you all coming and for your patience again.
Thank you from Network Connect.
So Aaron, I have a question.
Sure. Yep. Oh, which?
Gallagher, get off already? Gallagher. Yeah, I just wanted to know, so when we show up, we'll show up. So say if I'm in Newcastle County, I'm going to show up to the Hope Center, correct?
Yes, if you're part of the well, obviously, if you're in here, I'm like, I don't know. But yes, if you're part of the unsheltered count, you will show
Unsheltered,
up to the Hope Center.
Now, what
And
if,
it'll be sent out with your like volunteer assignment too, like what time to be there, when to do. So it's in the materials, but we'll also send it out directly to your email as well.
okay, and also, what if I wanted to do sheltered? That would be,
So
you do too, if both, if,
you can. The issue in Newcastle County with the sheltered count is the temperature dependence, as well as we're not quite sure how many sites there are going to be yet. We do know that Friendship House for sure operates their Newark site once the temperature drops below a certain level, but they were toying around with the idea of adding a Wilmington and a Middletown site based off needs, and they had a meeting about that earlier this week, and I'll be following up with them tomorrow to get that information, so I'll have a little bit more of an idea. But you're more than welcome to participate in it, but you won't get a notification and kind of until the week of on whether those sites are going to be active or not. Specifically only for Newcastle County. Kent and Sussex operate regardless of the weather, and we do have more comprehensive information on them, but Newcastle County is kind of the tricky one there.
understood. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question about the Narcan trainings.
Yeah.
There's nobody in my group that's bolded. So I was listening when you were saying about be great if somebody in your team was trained, and it's been circulating at my congregation to do it. So I know there's online kind of DIY trainings, but I don't know when those are. I can't do the one on the 18th. I already have stuff scheduled then. So do you know where I find out about doing the Narcan training kind of DIY online?
Yeah, so I want to say that because my staff got this training done, that we are able to provide the training to you after that. Like it was the training to be able to provide the training. So we can schedule a time to go through that information. We can also get you connected with Amos, who is our DSAM Narcan training guru. And you can also set up a time with him to do it directly with him as well.
It's not long, right?
It's about an hour, and there's a little quiz. You definitely have to do the quiz to pass the training.
Okay.
But there is like we are certified, so worst comes to worst, me or Sophie could sit on with you and go through it and just give you the quiz. And then once you get that, we'll send it to Amos and get you the certification and kind of all that stuff.
Okay, I am open to that. And then I had one other little question about the form.
Yeah.
It says, is this person head of household?
Yeah.
Are we just asking them if they, I mean, is that
Yeah.
basically, are they in charge of somebody else? Or like,
Yeah,
how do
I
you
mean,
define that?
it's really if they are, so like if they're a single individual, then they're automatically just gonna be yes, that they are the head of household. But if they are, like if it's two adults, it's really whichever one of them decides that they are the head of the household. And then if it's like a mom with a couple kids, obviously mom's gonna be the head of household. We just have to, it's like a required thing that we're required to put in there. But it can change. So it's really whatever they say. For the unsheltered count, you guys aren't gonna come across a lot of families. You might come across a couple different adults that are kind of staying together but don't consider themselves in a household. So it's really just kind of case by case basis. But yeah, it's self-report, so there's no specific like methodology that we use to determine the head of household. It's just whatever that group of people who are staying together that has indicated themselves as a household says.
Okay. Great, thank you. I look forward to this.
Thank you. And again, I apologize again for the little hiccup. It's been a week. In the mid training, we were also like getting half of our donation order from Amazon, so we're just kind of a little all over the place. But
No worries. I think at this point, all of us who've been on Zoom for however many years have experienced what you were going through. It's all
to
good.
to my defense, I've never had to be the one who actually set out the breakout rooms before. So I'm like, for my first time, yeah, that would happen. So great. I'm the brain person. I'm not like the Zoom logistics person a lot of the time. So but it's all good.
It's so weird. They just never appeared. But somebody else I was in a meeting with was like, Zoom has added all these additional features lately, and it has made their simple basic stuff, unfortunately, more complicated.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Sometimes that happens. Yep. Have a great rest of your day, y'all. See you when
Thank
it's
you, and I appreciate you for coming.
likewise. This was great.